The hypnotic swing of a Newton's cradle creates an illusion that fools the eye into watching the edges. While the middle appears perfectly still, it carries all the kinetic force, and without that stillness, the entire system collapses. In noir cinema, meaning lives in the gradation between light and shadow. Cinematographers call it chiaroscuro, where pure black devours detail, pure white burns it away, and so the truth is buried somewhere in the middle ground. And from this very idea, I find myself reflecting on the noir line from Tom Ford through a completely different lens. Noir anthracite is cold, mineralic, and architectural. It feels built rather than decorated. Fiery Sichuan pepper and ginger explode onto the senses like sizzling embers, woven among a metallic thread that cuts through dark air. There's dry ebony and birch, laced with bitter galbanum, and underneath rests a burning stone suspended between solid matter and smoke. This is a profile that requires the room to sit with something that refuses to perform. And yet a market that loves unique ideas looked at this and simply moved on. The Noir collection is dynamic and spans half a dozen flankers, which all feel like different pressures applied to the same underlying structure. Noir EDP keeps its darkness close, while Noir Extreme gives itself away before you've finished shaking hands. Then there's Anthracite, existing entirely outside of that binary. For me, the most interesting thing here is what this reveals about the survival of perfume inside a commercial system. What remains in the market is rarely what is most complex. It's what can be understood fastest, requiring the least interpretation to be accepted. But this rule of survival doesn't just apply to perfume, it applied to Tom Ford himself. The suave, effortlessly magnetic icon that the world celebrates is a masterfully crafted presentation, a brilliant uniform required for a commercial empire. He understood that high fashion is social theatre, and to survive in it, you must offer the world a beautifully curated surface. Maybe that's why Tom Ford spent most of his public life in a black suit and white shirt, a uniform chosen for the removal of everything unnecessary. Because before fashion, he studied architecture, a discipline that mirrors the structure of his image, his brand, the composition of his films, and the way absolute control always sits beneath the surface rather than in the decoration. So to better understand what the anomaly of anthracite might be, we can look for clues in the philosophy behind it. Karen Curry, a pivotal voice in the development of Tom Ford's fragrance program, has noted that the Noir line was Tom's personal direction, because he fundamentally views his brand as an extension of his own identity. Once you realize that, Noir reveals itself as a concept he's been circling in all of his pursuits for decades. And it's a fingerprint he left across perfumery. You can see anthracite in that print when you look at how he chose to live. When faced with the decision of how he'd like his own home to be, with all the resources in the world to build anything he desired, he chose the architect Tadao Ando, who answered with stoic concrete and arid precision. Rather than gold trimmings and theatre, raw stone and absolute restraint, because whatever noir at its core meant to him personally, it wasn't the warmth you see in Noir Extreme. He once drew a line between his two worlds, noting that while fashion elegantly commands the surface, film is where you are allowed to express who you are deeply inside. When viewed through that lens, perhaps the Noir line stops behaving like a product catalogue and starts behaving more like a self-portrait, with with one raw, unprotected edge left completely exposed. An intersection where the self-expression of film and the medium of fashion converge into perfumery. Perhaps it was a rare moment of pure artistic vulnerability, a look past the theatre and straight into the architectural foundation of his internal world. So maybe its commercial departure didn't mean it failed. It simply validated his viewpoint that they, the public, require the beauty of the surface, and it needs the curated icon to stay intact. And maybe that's what I find so fascinating about it, because anthracite doesn't feel like something made to be immediately loved. It feels more like something that escaped. And if the DNA of the line is truly built on Tom Ford the man, then perhaps anthracite wasn't an outlier at all. It was simply the part of him that wasn't designed for an audience. Because every now and then something slips through the cracks and reminds you that behind every perfectly constructed surface, there's still a person underneath. Because when I stop looking at the edges and focus on the middle, I keep landing at the same idea. Maybe all along, he wasn't actually Noir, and perhaps he was always anthracite.